a big chance you can sell it. India, liquidity-wise, is a different ballgame. So you are build up a big leader, looking to sell it everywhere, reaching every opportunity. So I think it's like not a catching up. It will be two different markets. I don't see very much synergy between of them so far. But it both interesting markets with very specific ball game for venture capital space. That's what my thinking is.
In terms of the geography, so Paul, Digital Ventures has made a lot of investment outside of Thailand, outside of Southeast Asia. So you seem to be going far from home. So what is your assessment about the local market, the regional market? So for fintech, do you think that there are still not a lot of opportunities for your firm?
I'm glad that you attached my fund at the end, because I think it hinges, the suitability of investments in this region hinges on the specific strategy of the fund that's backing it. So for Scion Commercial Bank, from a venture perspective, we tend to look for enterprise-grade technology that sort of feeds our back-end operations. So, we tend to be not as consumer-facing when it comes to tech investments. So if I wanted to do, say, a digital wallet or some sort of, consumer-facing fintech, a lot of times I'll have folks in the bank say, "Oh, we can do that ourselves," why would we want this one instead of that one? So if I say I want to do like a local lending startup, they'll sit there and say, well, how can they lend better than we can? Whereas if I say, oh, I have this interesting cyber defense technology, and they'll be like, well, we don't know how to do cyber. So it's like, perfect, then I'll bring it in. So for us, it's like, we have a harder time. We've looked locally, we've looked regionally, but every time we bring something that's very consumer facing, I'll always sort of get that typical corporate refrain, oh, well, we can do it ourselves. So that's why a lot of the technologies and a lot of the startups that we've actually wound up investing in are things that are more back office, back of house, enterprise grade. It cuts across multiple verticals within the bank. Because if I wanted to do an insurance startup, then I would probably have to talk to an insurance arm, and then they'll have any number of reasons why they may or may not be interested. So, and I think that's particular to our bank. So our strategy, I didn't set out to say, okay, we're going to invest globally, we're going to do these markets. We realized what our limitations were strategically and culturally. And we said, okay, these are the theses of technology, these are the theses that we're going to adopt in terms of our investment. And then we just basically go wherever the best technology is. So if we're going to do, say, quantum software, for risk management, portfolio optimization, then we just look at wherever, they're not, a plethora of players in the world. There's a handful of players, and they're in a handful of different markets, and we just say, okay, we're either going to go to Vancouver, we're going to go to Melbourne, we're going to go to Washington, D.C., the few places where you might find this technology. And then we just invest in the company we like the best. So I'm in some of these markets just by virtue of the companies we invest in.
So it seems like, so it's still depending a lot on the strategy, the overall strategy from the parent group. So do you see, so this is the questions for all of you, do you see any conflict in terms of decision making between the parent group and you as a venture capitalist, like in a case that, you see this is a very attractive startups, but then the management from the parent group would say, no, we're not going to invest in them. Is there any case like that?
I mean, for me working in the Japanese company and then doing venture capital, that alone is a fundamental conflict in that there's a risk aversiveness that happens with culturally that happens in the company. And in many ways, the way that Rakuten Ventures have solved it is simply we own up to it. Is that if the board does not want to do it, we put our names on it and we make sure the company is a success. That's been, in many ways, the biggest alpha here. It's great that we can draw synergistic lines towards different lines of business. Like Rakuten group has 60 or 70 subsidiaries. But in the end, we want to completely focus on the best companies, the best technologies, the best teams. And when we do that, then marrying that synergistic idea later on is a much easier task.
Anyone want to add to Semin's?
I think it very much depends what your mandate is. We are run by big corporate player. Corporate player is a GP, it's a major anchor LP, but at the same time we take external money, showing everybody that we export management capabilities and not linkage. No, we're not extension to our strategic arm of any our daughter companies or the corporate center. We have management experience, we want to introduce the management experience, and our LPs invest in our capability to do it properly in India, given our exposure to India from 2008. So it's like, as colleague said, it depends, what is your mission is.
I'd like to add one additional aspect to that. I think to Savin's point, we're dealing. I'm dealing with decision makers that sit in a corporate entity in a bank, but as a Southeast Asian financial institution in the middle of this big fintech wave, I think as a bank we're going through a transformational moment. So the bank is trying to realign itself around what its strategy needs to be. As a result, there's wholesale reshuffling within banks. Either new departments are coming up, they're moving people around. So the type of decision-making process I might have had to deal with 2 years ago is very different than what I have to deal with today. I personally am on my 4th boss in 3 years. The composition of my investment committee changes every 6 to 9 months. So just when I get a sense of which IC members are going to push back on which aspects of which deal, then they'll cycle people out, and then it's a discovery process all over again. And every time we get a new president or a new head of whatever business unit, their agendas might change a bit as well. So for me, my decision making and my strategy is a constantly moving target. And that's just, it's a frustration, but that's just the reality of corporate VC in a sector that's highly evolving.
So among the four of you, have any received external LPs, and how have they contributed to the operations of the fund?
They yell at me, so. I yell back, that's the business, right? So, no, actually, we made we are first-time fund, so we are quite known in Russia, in continental Europe. When we came here 2016, it was quite a challenge for us, but it's not rocket science, we been to India thanks to our colleagues, from 2008, and we just inherited a lot of the experience. The issue is what we did. We immediately not immediately, but after 2-3 years, apart from this Europe things, Europeans are useless unless they have particular experience. For example, Germans in risk management, we definitely brought them to some of our companies, but we start raising in India. Because sitting in one boat, it's not like they're not consultants, the people sitting with one boat with me. And I personally, because I'm just a single foreign partner, other partners coming from top-notch Indian funds, so I need a little bit challenging them, so not to look as a stupid Gora, stupid foreigner, I need something in my back, who will help me with their personal advice, on how to do in India. And we start raising, the corporate center say, idiots, what are you doing? Say, why you need external money? We'll give you all the money. We say, no. We need somebody. So we raised in India, and now we raised in India more than even we raised in externally. And it's tough guys, like Gujarati, Rajasthani, Marwari guys, they know what they're speaking about. And they're a great, great help. Wherever they say, they're always criticizing, they always say I'm doing wrong, but their substance helps me personally a lot, right? And this is the situation. So when it's somebody say what you prefer, Yeah, definitely I prefer a big check from some guys in Germany or Russia, Luxembourg. But at the same time, I really need like even a small check from India because it helps me operationally, it helps me to understand more and more what is India.
Yes. So let's focus on Southeast Asia for now. So there are an increasing interest from both commercial funds and corporates. So do you see it's getting more competitive? So IDD as a driver for expansion and innovation. Do you see that valuation is getting higher? And for Grab, as you might invest in the early stage and until the Series A, B stage, are you gonna pay for an attractive investment by any cost?
I think, again, for us, would go back to the partnership, right? For us, it's a partnership-first approach. We invest a lot of time upfront, and we also encourage the startups to do that with us to understand the value. So we would typically come in at growth stage, where not only the business model, the monetization is very clear, it's also about what is the value each side is bringing to the partnership. So the investment is really more a lubricant to strengthen the partnership and bring about more alignment. So from that sense, what valuation we come in at and how we value the partnership is really linked back to the first objective first.
And coming to the sectors, so a lot of deals in Southeast Asia have been in consumer internet. So what about B2B? So I see that Rakuten invests a lot in consumer businesses, but what's your take on B2B? Do you see any signal that B2B in Southeast Asia will get stronger and more attractive?
I think definitely with more developers kind of migrating back to their home countries, you will see more tech-centric companies starting up. For Rakuten Venture, we've invested in a multitude of B2B or tech companies based out of Southeast Asia. Like vSense is a computer vision company that has a global presence. Koda Payments is an Indonesian carrier billing company that has a Southeast Asia-wide presence. So for us, again, because we invest globally, we're able to do a real apples-to-apples comparisons with companies. And then we look at what kind of value and roadmap are they driving to. And when it ticks all those boxes, then we have much more confidence in investing in those companies.
How about you, Paul? So are you investing in both?
Well, I mean, a lot of our investments are fintech B2B. So, which has actually made it very challenging to find the types of investments we want here in the region. I mean, if I go to New York, it's very easy for me to find an entrepreneur who spent 10, 15, 20 years in a financial institution, sort of saw all the institutional problems, decided to come out, do their own startup. There is, a plethora of fintech VC funds that would invest. You don't see that as much in the region yet because most of our ecosystems here in Southeast Asia are less than a decade old. We have a lot of folks that are either in their 20s or early 30s or just out of business school, but we don't see a lot of those sort of corporate gray hairs that are saying, I am a senior VP in a big financial institution, I'm just going to jump out and do a startup, because that's an extremely high risk enterprise. There's not a lot of VC, there's not the wealth of VC money, there's not a lot of exit, so to leave a cushy corporate job and do a B2B startup is a very risky proposition. That, I think, will come in time. I think as the ecosystems in Southeast Asia mature and they hit that certain point in the life cycle, you are going to get people that are coming out saying, okay, I can solve this problem. I've been at Siam Commercial Bank or this such and such insurance company for 15 years and I know where the problems are. I think traditionally we've seen a lot of consumer facing, a lot of lifestyle, a lot of commerce, because I think those are the types of companies that is easy for a very young first-time entrepreneur to start. Fast forward 10 years and these are all serial entrepreneurs and you're joined by the experienced corporate veterans, then I think we're going to see the type of markets that are right for the types of investments that my bank will come in and invest in.
Yes, And why the majority of your investments so far have been outside of Southeast Asia, you do invest in funds. So what is the thesis behind the fund of funds model?
Well, so I think a lot of it was, again, we're a first-time fund. We've been doing corporate venturing for just over 3 years, which compared to Thailand, we're actually veterans, which means that the great majority of CVC funds have been doing it for, less than the cycle of a new iPhone. So for us to, and especially if we're going to go global, investing in funds when we're new to VC and we're new to some of these technologies, fintech, cyber, blockchain, whatever, it made sense for us to look for key players in some of these markets. So, we're looking at, say, New York, we're looking at London, we're looking at Israel, markets that